Hello, everybody. I am here with Robyn, and we're going to speak about Gene Key 37, the transit we're in, also the link to the Ring of Divinity, and some of the other things that we are feeling and seeing in the community. So welcome so much, Robyn. I'm so happy you reached out to me and that we're going to do this.
Yeah, we've been connecting for almost 2 years, I think, when I started Gene Keys and just dove in. And so I'm really happy about being here right now and just exploring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that the reason also why you felt like now was the time is that 37 is your purpose in the Gene
Yeah.
Key profile. So it's like what you're grounded in. And I
Yeah.
guess, I think we were in line 3 yesterday, which is your line. So I
Yeah.
guess that you also feel activated, or maybe how has this transit been for you? Have you been feeling grounded, or has it like brought up things? How has it been for you these first 3 days?
It's been grounded for me. What's so fantastic about this is that each time I'm exploring it, it comes up to something greater, right? So Vaughn and I, who's my partner, have been together for a while, and he carries the sixth gene key twice. I carry the 40th gene key twice, and the 37th ties in with all of that into our greater transfiguration or transmutation, whatever we want to call it. So, this individual body of mine, which has the DNA codes for the genetic shift, carries that through to the community now. And so that's how we're operating. We have a lot of community that's coming through here. We're in Maui, and it provides a space for a lot of illumination, right? And anything that isn't aware comes to the light. So that's where compassion comes in too, because I carry that aspect, which is the gene key that brings the darkness to the light, so that everything that is about humanity can come forward. So, and that happens to be happens to be in my emotional IQ. So,
Right. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, this brings me to I'm going to share my screen, I think, because what you're, everything, a lot of what you're mentioning is part of this ring of divinity, that which are the transits. We're in the 37, we're going to go into the 22 and 63 and the 36, like they're coming after each other. So it's like
yeah,
all this. And for me, for example, in my chart, I have nothing emotional. That center is completely white. And I don't even have, I have one, in human design, I have one gate from a root that goes like, points towards it. Otherwise, I have nothing. So there's not even a lot that can connect with one gate. And for
yeah,
me, it has taken, I mean, I think for me it was like a solitary process from the beginning, because when you are completely open emotionally, you take in everything, and it's what we sometimes call
yeah,
empaths, which I think is a like not so well used word. But I feel like for me, the turbulence of humanity, or
yeah,
of emotions, or distortion, sometimes it was how I was feeling it, amplified in my own body, would make me kind of make it a solitary process. And now, as I know my design better, and as I guess we can, the heart becomes bigger and we can embrace more, I can see, especially through the shamanic process and all that, I can see much more of the collective process of this ring of divinity, and what it is to start activating these codes. And that's also why, that's what interests me, because you are speaking of a collective process when together, these things are brought to the light, and then can
mhm,
be worked not only as, in our kind of own dark night of the soul. So
yeah. Oh, it's so beautiful too, Bella, because this 22nd gene key, which, whew, I mean, really diving into that and going deep from the 37 is probably the biggest transmutation that the planet can go on, because it ties directly with the 55th, which we've just been through as well. And that whole victimization had to be let go of. It had to be like transmuted within first, because without that, the let's say the amplification of all that is becomes too individualized, and then we start to identify with the I. Until we can see everyone as us in the identification of nothingness, there can't be the transfiguration. So we're all operating on our own systems until we no longer operate on that system. So grace, which is like something that can't be given and it can't be formulated, it's probably the most the deepest act of suffering that we go through brings us grace. Mm-hmm. And so that for me had to do with no longer attaching to anything, especially in relationship to the other. Because if we're rising in love, there's no attachment to that love because we already are. Mm-hmm. So this whole alchemy of family is no longer tied to the individual in the family tribal setting, even though I have that link that just totally pulls on that. Mm-hmm. It was released right away in my field. I have one daughter. Oops.
Yeah, I'm just going to show your...
Oh, yeah.
So we are speaking about the 40 and the 37 from the emotional center to the ego center, and you have it in your chart, and it's also your radiance and your purpose. So these are strong activations for you.
Yeah.
Saying that, we are always, even, what you're pointing at is that the design is always there, and then we can live it at different frequencies. Yeah.
Yes. And so when we're operating from identification, then suffering becomes the victimization, the 55th gene key karmic, scenario. When we operate from the awareness of what is, then there isn't any holding on to anything anymore. It becomes the greater truth. And my daughter was born the day before my birthday, on the 27th November. And so she carries also the 40th and the 37th. Came in as a totally different aspect of that because there wasn't a traditional family setting for us. And we operated from Maui in her teen years, and she now lives in New York, and she's totally independent, right? Mm. And so I lost my screen here just a second.
Are you seeing me? Or maybe you could just push on, if you have Zoom in the, or I can stop sharing as well if this is easier. Usually if you just go to the Zoom little icon. I can show you. I'm going to show your gene key chart in the meantime.
Yeah.
So here we have the gene keys. 1, 3, and then it's beautiful also to see that Mars, if we look at the planet, it's your vocation, 22, that is the unconscious Mars. And then in your EQ, which is the conscious Mars, you have the 36. So it's like, it's even what we're transcending, I feel like, in the world and society now, that immature masculine that has been basically, ruling for so many years, and now it's integrating the feminine aspect, both in each individual and in the collective, and knowing that immature masculine and immature feminine is in all of us. So it's not like blaming men or blaming women for being weak, and not, it's like it's that inner marriage in each one of us. And that's, I think, that's why I feel that the gene key chart is so telling, because right now where we are now, that is the aspect, that is the core wound. Maybe in 2000 years it's going to change so that that isn't the core wound. Maybe it's going to be Chiron, or it could be the moon, but that there is something with that. And for you, that you have those very emotional, the 22 and the 36 in this position, I guess that it's a life where you have to just embrace over and over and over again, like the messiness, but also the beauty of being human, or something
It's
like that.
so beautiful when it's actually looked at from the wholeness of those two aspects. So, coming into relationship, for me, I have a split definition. So, coming in with a aspect of myself in the male form of Vaughn in a single definition was a very interesting process, because it allowed me to see that I didn't need anything from anyone by merging in my split definition. So with the aspects of who we are coming together in our genetic makeup, when we transcend it to see it, when we're able to be aware of anything that is in our way, so to speak, and just be the observer of it, it no longer takes us into that suffering anymore. So as far as seeing the gene keys from the perspective of a timeline, let's just say that we interact with that, and because of the divinity linking to the gene keys of the alchemy too, it's kind of like taking peace, divine will, transfiguration, and illumination all at once, in with the gene keys of the 22, the 36, the 37, because it's all interacted inside of that. Mm-hmm. So that is what's so cool, is like we're expanding as a consciousness in all the aspects of ourselves that can bring about this transfiguration, let's call it an illumination, where our DNA is actually physically shifting to be that which is non-identification. Because the physical form is just basically here to transit. I mean, we're just here as a transit, and we're bringing in the codes that bring new earth, that bring heaven on earth. So I see the gene keys as a way to bring about this new Eden, this which has always been here. It's that we were shadowed by and dove into what we would be considered duality, right? So duality is basically looking at it from the aspect of the light, the darkness and the light, the merge of all that is. And that brings about us this beautiful merging of the divine masculine and divine feminine, because there really isn't conflict anymore on the planet when that merges. That's like the biggest part. And so Vaughn and I were told by our higher guides, by the galactic core of who we are, to bring that forward, so that this planet isn't about, like staying still. We're in motion, and we're moving through, and really looking at like 2020 being this new earth. 2027 was projected as the beginning of this, but I really feel that as an individual and then collectively, we can bring it into the 2020 timeline as timeless.
So interesting. I was just going to ask you about the 2027. I was listening to Raw this morning, and the 25, which has been my way kind of into accepting, it's about innocence and acceptance, accepting those emotional gene keys. And you know, him saying that in 2027 we're going to be in a 6-line consciousness, and now we're in a 1st line, and that is going to shift a lot of things. And a lot of 6 lines, for example, you have a 6 line in your culture, so it's like you might not really be fitting into society until then, because there is not really a setup for that collectively. But I like to also, you know, that you're saying that it's not too soon to start, and there is already activations that make it possible to maybe come together in at least smaller groups and kind of start in the collective with this. So you see, you don't feel like we have to wait until 2027. I guess that's my question.
No, it's and Alicia and I've been really moving in that direction of voicing this, and not because, you know, we're right or anything. It's just that this activation now, this embodiment, let's say, of the DNA codes that we carry, I carry the 22.5 in my vocation. So grace moving that energy through to this 2020 timeline is like now for me. And so it's not about like trying to make it happen. It's allowing it to happen within our own vessel so that we can illuminate for others in our presence. You know, I mean, it's an allowance of the timelessness, because, you know, if we look at like the 5th gene key, okay, tied to this ability to see beyond, you know, what we normally call time. You know, I mean, time is basically not even a part of this aspect anymore. This aspect I call Robyn, because it's all interlinked into the highest possibility in the moment, right? So whatever the moment brings, it's in that timeless space. So we're not looking at it from like, let's project it out. It's in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where timelessness for us is within. And, you know, this also brings up the process of prosperity, because, you know, the cosmic union of our Christed self, let's call it, is in the 45th gene key, which also is interlinked with my evolution, which is the 16th of mastery. Mm-hmm. So if I sit with evolution as mastery, mastery is mastery of nothingness. It's the ability to transcend all that is in the now moment, and making and having it, you know, I use the word meaningless, but also nothingness as a space to be. Mm-hmm. So this is where we're at right now. I mean, the 45th, the 16th, and then the 9, which ties into all this, because I bring in also my life's work is invincibility. So I shine light on the shadow aspects that haven't been able to necessarily be completely illuminated yet. So when someone comes into my fields, I'm illuminating the shadow. So my auric field is actually very intense.
Right.
And it brings in that aspect of transmutation. Mm-hmm. So that really true mastery is mastery over nothing.
Right.
So that's the end of that phase of evolution, that we think we have to make something happen, or we've got to be something greater, and we haven't, you know, that's also part of the 22nd gene key, is to end the suffering that is within us, that held us in a space that that brought humanity to where it is now without having the ability to see beyond it, and then to look at it from the wholeness and actually honor everything we've done through, and bring that feminine, that quality of tenderness, that fire of tenderness that can come through. That is what this is about. Whew. You know, bringing that all together. That is the true nature of who we are, is the love that transcends it all. Because really the only power on the universe is love. Only power. The rest is just a story. And until humanity sees that aspect of themselves in every single person, like every person, not just, you know, people we think are like us, you know, I love them, I don't love them. This is about unconditional giving. This is about the new Eden. This is about the garden which we live in as a inner being who is here to transcend anything that holds us back from loving and from giving. And it's that beingness, when we're no longer even here as the form, what we choose to be. And I just have such gratitude for this moment, that you and I can bring this forward to, Bella. This is what we're here for. And I thank you for that. I think we're still here.
Yeah, we're still here.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, you know, for me, I feel like there's nothing to say actually somehow. But at the same time, I'm thinking, you know, there are some of the people in the 64 doors that are going to, you know, they are in the jinkies from like starting now, or maybe even starting to discover something else than just the everyday life, or that maybe only knew about strategy and authority and human design. And I'm just wondering if there's any, you know, any words, because you have been on this path for a while, and me too. What are the words that can, you know, accompany on a path into these systems and on a path back to, like, you know, a Christ consciousness, or like an integrated human being with feminine and masculine? Is there anything that you feel like you can share, like words on the way? Because what we're speaking about is not something that we just, you know, it might be just a snap of the fingers, but it's also a journey.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is to honor what the moment brings. You know, it's like stepping into, I didn't go into the gene keys and and start to finish, I mean, everything has been contemplated. So, you know, giving ourselves the the space to integrate and to allow whatever comes in to come in is the biggest gift we can give ourselves. So not to place judgment on self for, well, I'm still holding here or I'm over here and am I supposed to be here? You know, that has been the core wound. You know, repression is in my gene keys. You know, this part that says your 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 will got in your way. You know, your will got in your way, and so it's not that we need to eliminate anything from what we're processing. It's to dive in, and that's probably the hardest part, is to honor all the shadow as well, because it's not, the honoring of the shadow just brings the beauty of who we are through, because if we're not honoring it, then it's it's hiding from us, it's out there somewhere, and it'll show up in our life. And so these gene keys are beautiful to illuminate that aspect that may have been held on to for whatever the journey has brought forward for us. And so just being with that, just, you know, holding your own heart in this process. That's really what it is. It's like taking a breath and the relaxation of that breath. You know, this 40th gene key is also about ending disease on the planet. So if we can simply be in our process and love that process, and we don't have to love it, you know, we don't have to, we can be whatever with it, but allowing ourselves not to have any judgment in it is like just being the observer.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest part, isn't it, Bella? Like just being the observer of it.
Yeah, I like that we were doing with for the workbook of the 37. We're writing about aspecting, you know, that you can do with anything to kind of get a different perspective so that you can see yourself, and then whether it's the shadow or whether it's a parent or something that you don't really, that you want to repress instead of allowing it, so that you sit and you speak as yourself, and then you can change and you can be the other, and then everybody gets to express, and then you sit on in a third position as the observer, and then you can see. And how, you know, I've done it, I remember doing it with, even with like money and things like that in some trainings, and how we can, when we remove ourselves, like not really remove, but when we zoom out and we can see
Yeah.
from the observer's view, from that, you know, the neutral witness that you're speaking about, and how everything can actually, you know, everything can be voiced, but it's seen from a higher perspective. So I feel like that's part of what you're saying, to kind of zoom out instead of like recoiling in, you know, the struggle.
Yeah. Yes, and even when an external comes in and we get triggered by that, you know, it's like okay, so zooming out of that as well, like, and then being the seer of the seer, if that makes sense. Like being able to see the seer.
Right. And
Because
I'm
yeah.
wondering, because you have a 39 too in your attraction, and that is
Yeah.
vocation and projection. So I'm wondering,
Yeah.
as you walk through the world with, you know, those ideas or this knowing about the new world, like what are the projections and what are the things that you provoke, and how do you deal with that for being like, you know, a new thinker somehow, or a new beer?
Well, you know, what's probably the number one trigger that I've provoked is that how can you do it in the physical? How can we be this in the physical, this density? right? And so people will say, if you are all that, then you wouldn't be here. Well, no, that's not true, because we're invoking this within our within our system. So that's what the provocation is. It's like the light comes in, and then everything that is illuminated out is illuminated to, let's say, our aspects of the other, and then whatever is to be seen is seen. And then if we can see it from the seer's point of view, or zoom out, like you said, then we're not holding it as ours. Mm-hmm. So we can take on another's journey if we go like this and recoil, or we can see it as an aspect of us that is in the journey of its own illumination.
Right.
So then it's not held onto, then it's not in this space where it needs to hold tight. It's relaxed. It's that end of repression, I call it. I mean, I not only provoke, I bring an intellect to it, and sometimes my intellect will provoke the mind to try to intellectualize it. And so then that's also part of the release, and just recognizing it and loving that as well. Like it's not to destroy our ego that we came, it's to invoke it and to bring light to it, and to honor everything that we have played in the duality game, to bring it into this, what I call the aspects of illumination. Because to include means that we're not going to need to find it out somewhere. We're not seeking anything. We're not seeking what our ego wants or what our identification wants. We're not looking for something to identify with us in that sense. We're allowing all of it to just be us. And see, that allowing is, in that acceptance and allowing, we can be whatever it is in the moment. And if an aspect of us comes in and says, hey, but that, like, that's so far out there, how could you even bring that in? It's a process to move that through, because in the beginning, definitely triggered by that, like, who do you think you are, kind of thing, because the ego is trying to make a statement then, right? The ego is trying to say, I'm this. But when we have no identification on it, then it doesn't affect this aspect, this being here, this physical form, because it allows everybody to be where they're at. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have an agenda, so it's taken a while to be in that revelation. Let's say when we went through the whole revelation process, it's a process. We realize things that we wouldn't have normally realized if we had been inverted into this matrix I call inversion. It's like extroversion first, by illuminating our aspect from what would be the evolution, and then bringing the light in, but not from the place of, I've got to show you something, which is where I first started in the Gene Keys. To be honest, is like, there isn't any place we cannot start from something we're not. So I had to start with, I'm in my ego, I'm in my spiritual ego with this in the beginning. So, and then involving it, just saying, okay, so that's where you're at. that's where you are. You know, it took a while to include the spiritual ego.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. So, just, it's beautiful that we can come together. I feel such gratitude and honoring of this moment. My heart is so, well, it's here now. It's ready to expand so much greater than I've ever even imagined, because humanity is ready. We're ready for this. We are ready to live in harmony. We are ready to live in peace. We are ready. And it just takes each one of us to start that journey and to be in full acceptance of wherever we're starting.
Yeah. You know, your essence, your pearl is 46-1. So it says simplification, back to the delight of being here in physical form and being human, you know, which has been, this is my EQ in line 3. So it's been one of my challenges to come back to the acceptance and to the full body yes of being here in this form, because it seems so much easier to be in spirit, because we are maybe not trusting the individual process in each one of us, and then it's easier to go somewhere else. But I guess, yeah, I feel like more and more of us are rediscovering the full body yes of being here, and also somehow the, you know, the contract that we have for this planet, for this humanity, for this journey, and for this collective, which is
yes, and this DNA coding that we call human carries the galactic core within. So this is why simplicity comes back, because all the geometric coding, whatever that is for us, is simply perfect. It's perfection.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Robyn.
Thank you, sweetie. I adore you. Thank you for all your work. You've been like out there just exploring every aspect and putting it out there. And I honor you. I love you. I see you.
I see you too. Thank you. You are this one, you know, I'm as a 4/6, I look at 1/3s and I see you, you're bold, you're empowered. And you know, it's always like a role model for me in the 1/3. We say the 6 is a role model, but I see that light in the 1/3 of being, having decided to be bold, to be empowered, whatever it takes, you know. So
whatever it takes.
You for that.
Yeah. Well, love, we'll talk again soon. And just thank you for taking the time, and you know, like in this no time, we did it.
We did it. Thank you.
Love you, honey.
Love you.
Bye now.